Peace and blessings, world. eCushion is here with the second semester of 2024. This is the first class, and I'm really excited to be here. Thank you so much to our friends down in Brazil at NGO Radio Terra for helping put this all together, as well as all the other great educators and students who participate in these weekly lessons for all levels and all ages. I'm really excited because this semester we get to fine-tune a lot of the concepts that we started last semester. I get to come back this semester fresh just like you do, and I love that feeling. Today we're going to begin like we did last semester, and I'm going to go back over a brief history of the drum set and rhythmic codes, all the way up through time. I'm going to demonstrate some of my favorite grooves, and these are grooves that I use in a professional setting all the time. I'm going to show you two really crucial blues shuffles. I'm going to show you some of the great drummers of that genre. I'm going to show you some of my favorite rock beats and some of the drummers and songs of that genre. I'm going to do the same thing with some reggae stuff, and I'm also going to break down some hip-hop breaks that come from classic funk records. And the genealogy of all of that music is really awesome and potent to know the history of, and it all sort of fits in with this general drumming tree, this general music genre and history tree of life that we all stem from and are a leaf on. I'm excited because I'm here with my Tamburo drums. Thank you so much to them. Proel, Icon Microphones, Roland Corporation, and Roland Corporation. Thank you so much. So, a brief history of the drum set. Let's begin. It's a challenge to throw all of this information into about 30 minutes and also include the playing examples, but we'll do our best. I am passionate about this history, and so it is a labor of love, and it's fun every time. The story does begin in Africa, as many stories do, regarding the origin of rhythmic codes, dance, culture, the migration of people even. The history of the drums has a storied and checkered past because of the many stories and tragedies of the transatlantic slave trade and other slave trades that took people out of Africa and into other parts of the world. Because of this movement, we have a cross-pollination of people, culture, we have the robbing of language, we have the killing and the raping and the pillaging and stripping of culture, and the regaining and reclaiming and reimagining of a new one in America and in the Caribbean, in other parts of Africa, in Indonesia, India, parts of the Arab world, Northern Africa, Ireland, to name a few, Brazil. These rhythmic codes are sacred and important to everyday cultural life, so it's important to come to them with humility and respect. I recognize that as a white person from the West, I'm sworn in, not born in. And so I approach all knowledge and education that is other than me with respect and due diligence. Still a student, yet an educator. Thanks for hanging with me this first lesson of 2024, second semester. Like I said, it all starts in Africa, and then it moves through, not in a linear sense, but sometimes concurrently, the order of which I'm not going to be super specific on because the timelines are so vast and overlapping. But as we move from Africa out into Eurasia, out into the Eastern world, into India, into China, Japan, up to Spain, up to southern Italy, up to Ireland, over and across to Bahia in Salvador, Brazil, throughout Brazil, all the way up through northeastern South America until we get to French Guyana, Suriname, Colombia, Venezuela, Trinidad and Tobago, all the way up into the Caribbean. And then we get to the trifecta. We get to Haiti and Dominican Republic, the island of Hispaniola, Jamaica, and Cuba. And then we continue going north, and we find ourselves in New Orleans. We find ourselves in the south. We find ourselves in Miami. then we go up. And as the story of America unfolds, so does the story of Black American music in all of its many forms, jazz. Through field hollers and spirituals and church music, and through the brothels of New Orleans, jazz is born. Through Congo Square, culture and swing and Creole culture is forged in New Orleans. And as the great Black migrations happened in all the way through the 50s, 60s, and 70s, 80s, Black Americans, Latinos found themselves in different parts of the country, spreading these rhythm codes into new territories, mixing and melding with other cultures. And then through time, we see the emergence of all the different many styles of Black American music, fusing with Afro-Cuban and Latin jazz, getting all the way through up into electronic era music and hip-hop, disco, house music, and into modern styles. The drum set is about 106 years old, and Ludwig creates a drum set that everybody goes crazy for. It's a jazz drum set in 1908. And early drummers accompanied dancers with this drum set. They were in the vaudeville era. People were playing things with drag rolls on the snare drum and playing on wood blocks. And the drum sets looked very different from this. They didn't look like this. They looked like something like this. So drags and swing and playing wood blocks that were mounted over the bass drum, getting this kind of sound. Washboards and other instruments, thumbs with thimbles playing the washboards, different mutes and plungers on the trombone and trumpets. Completely different sound. And polyrhythms galore. Everybody would be playing in the same key, yet everybody would be playing their own solo at the same time. By the 1930s, drummers had taken center stage. The emergence of Gene Krupa, Buddy Rich, Chick Webb, Sonny Greer, Sonny Payne in the 50s started to take front and center stage. Louis Bellson with the double bass drum. Beats like this. Beats played a central part to the jitterbug and to the Lindy Hop and the swing era dancing that propelled the business for all that to take place. It is absolutely crucial that we start mentioning the drummers in that era that started to make and shape what we would later call the foundations of swing drumming and then go into bebop. These drummers are Big Sid Catlett, Baby Dodds, and Zutty Singleton. It is no surprise to me that because of America's incredibly deep past regarding jazz, which is arguably our greatest export in this country artistically, that these drummers came from New Orleans, that these drummers all had some type of connection to the state of Louisiana, which happens to be the birthplace of jazz in America. And again, this beat ends up becoming something super relevant in New Orleans second line drumming. This beat right here becomes sort of like a pop groove for the 30s, late 20s and 30s with Louis Armstrong, and the Hot 5 and Hot 7, but really its roots are from New Orleans. It is super crucial to note that the American drum set is comprised of multiple percussion instruments put together. Hence the reason why it looks like this. But then it eventually transforms into this. And then into this. And then into this. Then into this. And it keeps going. But it's not just drums, it's also cymbals. Cymbals have a very, very deep history in Turkey. They also have a deep history in China. But cymbals are traditionally known for being forged, no pun intended, in the hot fires of Istanbul. Avedis Zildjian is the founder of one of the most famous companies called Zildjian, and their family's deep cymbal history comes from the 1600s over in Turkey. And they come over to the States in about 1928, and they start to make friends with Chick Webb and Big Sid Catlett and all these great famous drummers, Baby Dodds. And as the drum set starts to mature, so do the cymbals. It's also super important that we talk about the brushes. Brushes come from fly swatters. So they started out like this, and they were household objects used to kill flies. But people started bringing them to gigs and started to use them. So we have grooves like this. Here's a few brush patterns that I like to play. One is just called circles, and they are concentric circles coming into each other. So one's going counterclockwise and the other's going clockwise. Another great brush pattern that I like to use is simply called tippin'. And it's a circle in the left hand going clockwise, and then a straight line going down the side of the snare drum, with 2 and 4 being at the south side and 1 and 3 being at the top side. And I mimic the act of snapping my fingers casually as if I'm listening to music to create where I put 2 and 4. So if I put 2 and 4 on the outside of my body when I snap, so 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4. Well, then that's kind of where I'm going to put 2 and 4, right? 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3. Another great one that I like to do has a flip in it. I don't really know what to call this one. I know that all these grooves I learned from the Philly Joe Jones brush book, though. Check that out. So the left hand is still doing that circular pattern going clockwise, and I'm still using 2 and 4 at the bottom of the snare, but instead of just tipping 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, I'm gonna slide and flip my wrist so my top side is now at the bottom to make that 2 and 4 accent. 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, and you hear that the flip is what makes that so significant, which sounds different from right. So tipping, shuffling. And then finally, I'd like to share this brush technique called sweeping. And this is an up and down or left to right, depending on how you want to think about it, in the left hand. So, and tipping in the right hand. 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 2, 4, 2, 4, 1, 3, 1, 3, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4. We can speed it up. Love brushes, and brushes were super effective, and they helped make the recording process better and easier and cleaner and diversify the sound that everybody could get when in the studio. It was a challenge to create records in the 30s. Cutting to acetate. They were cutting in the studio direct to a needle, processing that sound onto a piece of acetate, and when the needle would jump, it could mess up the whole take.